Okay, hello everyone. It is Sunday the 6th of March, I think. Yeah, fairly certain it is. And I'm just going to do one tonight, and I have had no idea what to pick, so I literally just put my hand in the box and grabbed the first one that came out, and the first one that came out was this one. Now, this is a very kind donation from a gentleman and a scholar called Jason B. Standing, who I met through Facebook. Haven't met him in person yet, but he seems like a jolly nice bloke. And now the last time in fact it was the first time, I tried one of his whiskies, which was the better than I thought it was going to be bagpiper from India. I put a picture of Jason up, and it probably wasn't the best one that I could have used for him, so I think you'll agree that this one is a hell of a lot better, and I think it's probably a fair representation of him as a person as well. So thank you very much, Jason. Thank you very much for this. Ignore the noise and the clicking and the whirring that's going on in the background. That's just my dishwasher. So this particular one, which he sent through the post, is I'm not sure if you're going to be able to read that on the label. It's an Inverleven 1991. Now this is actually very unusual and quite difficult to get hold of, so I'm quite honoured to have received this from him, because I've never ever had an Inverleven before, with good reason, because it's rock hard to get hold of. Inverleven was part of a massive complex, and a picture of it is now, and as you can see, it's a very attractive complex as well, that was built in 1938 in Dumbarton, and I'll put a map of Dumbarton up now so you can see where that is. It's just northwest of Glasgow, and like I say, built in 1938 by Hiram Walker, who was the guy and company that owned Canadian Club. Now, the thing to bear in mind at this time is in the early 1900s, Scotch whisky was actually quite poorly regarded, and it was more sort of Irish and American and Canadian were the ones that were kind of dominating the market. And blends as well, Scotch blends. Single malt was practically non-existent. It was pretty much all in the blends. And Hiram Walker owned the Ballantine's blend, which was absolutely enormous, and they needed to keep up with production, so they built a complex which had 2 malt whisky distilleries and then a grain distillery as well, essentially to give them the production levels to satisfy the demand that was there. So of the 2 single malt distilleries, one was called Lomond, and the other one was Inverleven, which is this one here. So they would use those 2 distilleries along with the grain, and also a couple of other distilleries that they owned as well. I think there was Glenbergie, Scapa was one of them that I had a few nights ago. And they would use that to create Ballantine's, and basically any malt whisky that came from Inverleven and the Lomond distillery would go straight into Ballantine's. In 1987 it was taken over by a company called Allied Brewers, who through a whole multiple chain of events became Allied Domecq, which you might have heard of because they were in the up to sort of mid-90s a very, very big drinks company. Ultimately the 2 malt distilleries were closed. Lomond was closed in 87, but it might be 85, and then Inverleven was closed in 1991. The grain distillery, which was called Dumbarton, carried on going till 2002, and it was basically run into the ground. They couldn't do anything in terms of expanding it or improving it, so it just got completely mothballed. I'm not sure if the building's still standing though. I don't know if it's still there and being used as something else. So essentially, Inverleven that we have here, this is actually a bottling from the year that it was closed down. Now, there was never any official bottlings, basically because they were using it for Ballantine's, but this kind of brings me neatly onto independent bottlers as well, because, and I'll put a picture of the bottle now, because obviously it doesn't look like that, but the bottle is from an independent bottler called Gordon MacPhail, which are very well known, and they've got loads and loads of bottlings around. Now, what independent bottlers do is they will buy stock from various distilleries and bottle them up under their own label. Most of the time they will use the name of the distillery, so they have used Inverleven. Sometimes certain distilleries won't want it known that there is a particular type of whiskey that might be slightly different to what they want to be recognised for, and they won't actually allow the independent bottlers to call it that particular name. So those bottlers will end up trying to be a bit cute in terms of the names that they use for it, or they'll use a quirky name that gives some subtle hint as to where it might be from. But in the main, independent bottlers, what they'll do is they'll select certain casks. It might be a single cask, it might be a range of casks. It might be in the case of Inverleven that the place is being closed down and they're buying up casks themselves so that there is still stock available that they will mature, they will hold on to, and then bottle them at a later date. Because this was distilled in 1991, hence that age statement. It's a 1991 Inverleven. It's a 15-year-old, so it was bottled 15 years later, but it was kept by Gordon MacPhail or possibly some other holding company on their behalf in bourbon casks for 15 years before Gordon MacPhail bottled it and then put it on under that label. But what independent bottlers allow you to do is find other versions of whiskies that you might like, or in the case of Inverleven, whiskies that wouldn't otherwise have reached the market as a single malt. Sometimes they play around with different casks, sometimes they'll take particular years, sometimes they'll even take casks that the distilleries themselves don't want because it doesn't meet their requirements for where they're using it, either in their ordinary bottlings or it goes towards a blend. And the independent bottlers come along and go, I'll buy that off you, I'll bottle it myself, I might put it in a wood finish, I might do something with it, something unusual, we might release it at cask strength, it's a well-known brand, we might just do it as a limited edition. But it means that you've got other versions of whiskies that you might like to be able to enjoy. And independent bottlers tend to take a bit more care. There are one or two out there that will just buy whatever they can and then just flog it for next to nothing. But a lot of the independent bottlers, and Gordon MacPhail are one of them, the Lang brothers are well worth checking out as well, in terms of being very selective in what they pick, making sure the quality is very good, doing what they want to do with it if needs be. But otherwise, just basically going, look, if you like this particular whiskey, we've got this bottling, we think you might like that. Or you might have heard of this whiskey, there's not an official bottling of it, but we've got some, this allows you to try it. So, very grateful to Jason for sending this to me, because it's a whiskey that I've never had before, had barely even heard of, to be honest, simply because that and Lomond were just being used for Valentine's and never seeing the light of day. So quite a light colour, kind of obviously putting it, well actually no, you kind of, I've completely forgotten how to talk. You can kind of see it. I was wondering whether the black fridge was actually going to impede the colour, but it almost picks it up even better. Anyway, it's quite light in colour, it's a 40%, quite fresh on the nose actually. A little bit of floral in there, a slight touch of honey, very gentle, not very obvious, but yeah, quite heathery as well. Yeah, quite fresh, light, not heavily sherried, and it's been matured in bourbon casks, so you would sort of expect a richness in there, but it's not there. It's not a heavy sherried feel to it. That's not too bad actually. That's very pleasant. It's light, it's floral, it's got a nice softness to it, there's a really good roundness to it. It's not too sweet, it's not too cloying, there is a kind of honeysuckly feel to it. It's quite gentle, but it's very, very pleasant indeed. You know what, that is not too bad at all. There's a little bit of woodiness coming through now, but again, it's quite gentle, it's quite soft, it supports it quite well. There is this nice freshness to it. It's actually really, really pleasant, and a decent aging on it. 15 years. It's just taking the edge off everything. It might be a little bit too fiery if it was a bit younger, but I can see if you left it longer to say a 21-year-old, it would actually lose what there is in there. I think it's pretty much probably around its perfect age. You're looking at about, if you can find it, about 50 quid or so, which isn't too bad considering it's something that's non-existent anymore. That is actually really, really pleasant. It's light, it's fresh, it's soft. It's got a nice kind of candy floss, honeysuckle, slightly spicy, but nothing too overpowering. There's a little sea saltiness in there, but it works really well with the sweetness. That's really good. Really, really nice. Thanks, Jason. That was an absolute star. Very impressive, that. So if you can find it, get hold of one of those. Really, really nice. Good introductory malt as well. Good for one for people that aren't going to want anything too intense, but are looking for something different, unusual, and with a bit of complexity. And the flavours are still going even now. That surprised the hell out of me, that. Very, very nice indeed. Right, that's that one for tonight, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.